Hi, everybody. Again, my name's Charles, and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Patrick, or whoever asked me to speak here tonight. Madam Secretary, yeah. I forgot I was speaking here tonight, actually, until just a couple hours ago, because I was all up here in my head about an incident that started last night. I was working and driving some people to out in Palm Springs area, brought them back. They lived in West Hollywood, was driving home, and all of a sudden, coming down the bottom of Barham, making the turn onto Forest Lawn, and I run out of gas. I didn't know that right away. I mean, like, what's going on? Because I had showed that I had like 100 miles to empty. And I started up, went a little further, and now I'm in a really dark section of Forest Lawn Road, and it's like wet, and there's a homeless guy in the van. I pull in behind a van, and there's a homeless guy in there. And so anyway, I get some help. They come, and I had this happen to me last summer, and but I was in a parking lot, and I thought I had gas to get. I was going to buy gas, and then while I'm sitting there, all of a sudden, my low pressure light goes on. So the guy shows up, gets me enough gas, and then I tell him, so he puts enough air in my tire to I make it to the gas station, and when I go to my regular place and they don't have a air pump, it's not working. Anyway, so I spent the whole day today having to deal with it. I just bought these tires. I got 4 new tires 42 days ago. And so I had to go deal with the tire shop today, Costco. And it was just a total so it was all up because I use my car for my job, and so today was like totally just a waste of 6 hours, pretty much just to find out I got a little puncture in my tire. They fixed it, but I'm all spinning out of control over that. That's where I go. I'm like, oh no, I gotta buy a new car now. Yeah, when I ran out of gas. And it turns out, I should have got this fixed a long time ago, I guess, but I figured I know how much gas I have in there, but I need a new gas gauge or something because, it's showing that I got a quarter of a tank and I don't. And anyway, but then when I was sitting outside hanging around Costco, I realized, oh my God, I'm speaking tonight. And I didn't really want to come here, to be honest with you, but I know that that's what I got to do, so. I just went home and tried to swing into action and let the rest of what happened earlier today kind of fall to the wayside and get focused on coming here tonight. And I'm really glad I'm here because welcome to the new guys, so many new guys here tonight, and 2 great birthdays. That's just so awesome. It's always great to celebrate our milestones, whether it's your first day or 17th year. It's awesome to be sober. So let me just give you, I know a lot of you or maybe some of you might know a little bit about my background, but let me just tell you that I earned my seat here. I'm a fallen down drunk, and from Pittsburgh. I got sober in Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and grew up in a pretty more regular, dysfunctional, normal/family. I had a lot of brothers and sisters. My mother was the admitted alcoholic. My dad was the heavy drinker. He could put it down. My mom was the periodic type that would drink. She would save up and then go on these binges, and just the whole household would be. She stayed at home, and so she would just turn the whole household upside down when she would go on these week-long benders that were just totally out of control. So by the time I hit high school, I think my second year of high school, my mom was getting sober, and initially she started telling me I needed to go to some meetings. So I was 14, 15 years old, being suggested to go to meetings. I started drinking like a lot of us, pretty much just stealing some booze. We always had booze around the house, plenty of beer in the refrigerator, so I was always able to. And that's another thing I should let you know is that, I believe that I'm an alcoholic way before I took that first drink. Essentially, I'm a liar, a thief, and a cheat. And even as a little kid, I don't know where this, because I wasn't taught this. I went to Catholic school my first 3 years of life. But man, I would lie. If I stole something from you, I would lie about it and say, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. And I was a little petty thief as a little boy, and where did that come from? I don't know, but I believe it's part of my alcoholism. I believe I needed a drink in the second grade, and that would have probably really helped out a lot. And so anyway, like most of us, I started it around. I started learning how to drink other than at home in the Boy Scouts of all places, going camping. The older boys smoking cigarettes, and they eventually shared with us some, after we forced them to give us some cigarettes, and then drinking some beer and stuff like that. And it just progressed from there. Like I said, I always pretty much had able to steal it. Got into a little bit of pot at this time too, because it was probably a little bit easier to get weed than it is to, get booze. But back in that era, you just asked somebody, you just waited outside or had an older sibling, to go to the liquor store. We had beer distributors back in PA, and some of them were even drive-through. So you could drive through, and they would just, put it in the trunk. They didn't really card a whole lot back then. And as a teenager, one of the rites of passage was learning how to drive with a beer between your legs, because many of you remember there were no cup holders in cars back then. And, they're just sort of typical things, but definitely I was a teenage alcoholic, had a problem with alcohol. I went from being a scholar student in elementary school to barely graduating high school. That's how fast it went. It's a progressive disease. I was destined for a college education, a life of grand goings-ons, and my parents had really great hopes for me. But by the time I was in high school, I was barely making it. Luckily, I did graduate though, and got into the restaurant business, where I fell in love with that industry. I mean, I didn't have to get up too early. I could, I had to get off work at 11 o'clock or so, and we could drink all night, and I didn't have to get up too early. So I fell in love with that business. Plus, alcohol was served in a lot of the places that I worked. I was a busboy in the beginning, but had a knack for cooking. So I got into the culinary end of the business, and my first geographic was to Grand Canyon, Arizona, for a 3-month contract to work there. I worked in the Altavar Hotel, washing dishes like everybody else, but graduated to the line very quickly. So I learned a lot, had a lot of great chefs teaching me, and got thrown out of that job before the contract was up. Asked to leave early, a couple weeks early, and I had a brother in Los Angeles and a sister in Albuquerque. So I bought a bottle of vodka at the bus station in Flagstaff and a ticket to LA. I was going to come to LA. I'm on the bus and I'm having a couple sips, and this lady sees me and says, she goes and tells the bus driver. The bus driver comes back and says, "Sir, either give me the bottle or get off the bus." So I got off the bus, bought a ticket for Albuquerque, New Mexico, where my sister was living. And I got a couple bucks back, and I got some more booze. But I made it to Albuquerque, surprised the heck out of my sister when I told her, "Hey, I'm downtown." And she wasn't expecting that at all. But anyway, she was pretty cool. Her and her husband took me in. They had a newborn, and she said, "You got 30 days to get a job and to find a place of your own." Well, I had a job in 4 days and a place of my own in 7. And so I lived in Albuquerque, and that's where I went to a culinary school in Bernalillo County, and worked again for some really great chefs, had a lot of great teachers along the way. But something happened after a couple years there. I just felt this need to go back to Pittsburgh, and I did. And went back to Pittsburgh in the winter of 1988, and I didn't have a winter coat proper. And I'm like, "You went the wrong way. You were supposed to go to the West Coast, not come back to the East Coast." But that was in December of '88, and on July 4th, 1989, I was calling the central office in downtown Pittsburgh, and some guys came and did a 12-step call on me. And I had an apartment of my own, but I was staying a lot at my mom's, because she just had all the comforts, at her house. It was so much nicer to stay there. She was at work, and these guys came and said there was a meeting that night, so I went to that meeting. And this guy came up to me after the meeting and wanted to give me a big book, and I says, "Hey, I'm not buying that book." And he says, "Oh no, I just want you to have it." He says, and I says, "Oh, okay, thanks." I would later become friends with that man, and end up getting to attend his funeral as well. Really super great guy. Just gave me the book. I didn't get sober in 1989, but I was given the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I kept it with me everywhere I moved, and every now and then I'd get it out and read some of it. Not so much the first 164, but the stories. And depending on my state of drunkenness, I would either laugh or cry. And I loved Any Day Was Wash Day and so many of the other old great stories. I got sober on the third edition. So there was a period during the 90s where I bounced around the rooms of AA, would come in only because other people wanted me to, never on my own. Finally, in 1996, a series of things happened. I was finally, in the summer of 1996, I was just at the point where I hated who I was and how I was living. I just couldn't do it anymore. I feel as though at this time I started putting out this soul call to God to help me. And through a series of events, I was living in a flop house on the north side of Pittsburgh at this point, and working in downtown, a really good job. I was a waiter at this point, making really nice money in a high-end restaurant, pretty much staying nice, steady little drunk almost all the time. And but I hated how I was living. And I got suspended from the job for coming into work. I overshot the mark one day just a little bit too much, was a little bit too drunk, and got sent home for a long weekend and just drank the whole weekend. I ended up at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting on that Monday. And the guy that was speaking was my age and had 5 years. And I thought, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. So I stayed sober that whole week, but then I made a pocket full of money and I didn't really have any of the tools. I had phone numbers, but I didn't know how to use them. And I ended up drinking that weekend, and for 6 more weeks, I would be doing a long slide into Alcoholics Anonymous, so that finally on October 20th, 1996, I came to, and I looked in the mirror, and it hit me. God doesn't want you living like this. And through a series of events, I luckily ended up in the detox in downtown Pittsburgh, and the journey began. These guys came in and did a panel that night. And one of them said every day he got on his knees and he asked this higher power God for the strength not to drink that day. And every night he thanked this higher power, and I said, I'm going to do that. So I was glad I had my own room in the bed. I got down on my knees that night. I just asked God, I says, help. And I can just tell you that a sense came over me that everything was going to be okay. And it has been essentially from that day to this, punctured tires, you name it, people passing away, everything's seems to always work out. And it's because I finally decided to listen and to do what you folks all suggested instead of me trying to do it myself. And because I had the attitude when I was around Alcoholics Anonymous and those other times that, you'd tell me to do something, I'd say, I know, I knew everything. But I finally decided that I wasn't going to take that attitude and just start listening. And my sponsor told me I got a sponsor. He said, get a sponsor, so I got one. And that sponsor said, you're going to start praying every day. And I said, okay, I have no problem with that. And so I started doing that. And I finally started to actually read the meat and potatoes of the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the first 164, which I had never done before. I only read the stories and maybe the doctor's opinion. So I finally started to put this all together, and I saw myself in this. Every page I turned, there I was in this book, and I was like totally blown away. And when I was finished with the part where it says, what finishes with the part we often read at the meetings where you said, may we trudge the road of happy destiny. I actually had a sense come over me when I was reading that, like, oh no, this is the end, but it was really only the beginning. And I launched into rigorous action with these steps. It took me a little while to get through 4 and 5, but I finally did it. And I feel as though I live these steps today, I started trying to figure out what it's all about, and through this higher power God process, the answers come to me. And that prayer every day became a regular thing. I was given some books like Daily Reflections and some other ones, and started making a practice every morning to get up and have a routine where I would start with prayer and then just sit quietly. Eventually, one of the reasons why I wanted to move to California, I was finally able to do that. My mom passed away in 2005, and so now I was finally able to move. She already told me, she said, if you want to move, go ahead. I said, oh, no, because she got unwell, and so I stuck around. I have a lot of brothers and sisters, but it was just, good to be able to be there. And I'd already made amends to my mom, but when in the last couple of days of her life, she stayed at home. We had hospice at home for her, and I was able to do one more really cool amends with my mom that was just like so beautiful. The alcoholic woman that prayed for me to get into these rooms. And anyway, with her passing, this cruise line was looking for people to work to sail around Hawaii. So I applied for a job, and I got accepted, and I ran it by all my sponsors and my AA folks, and they says, yeah, go for it, you know. So it was a tough job sailing around Hawaii for a couple of months, but somebody had to do it. That financed my way out here, you know, and I finally, my brother's been living here for 40 years. And so I had somebody already living here, and I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous here right away. And you know what? When I first started going to meetings here, I stood up and said, you know, I'm new to the area. Because I wanted to, I had read, been a subscriber to the Grapevine for many years. And not the issue they talk about around here, but a different version of it. Anyway, so I heard a lot of stories about people that when they went to different areas, they didn't do what they should do, and then they ended up drinking or they got disconnected. I didn't want that to happen to me, so I came here kind of like a newcomer, got patched in right away, and just started doing what I always do. You know, I do the same thing every day, essentially, that I was taught to do in the first 30 days. So I learned the basic tools in the first 30 days of sobriety, and it's just like wash, rinse, and repeat, and I just keep on doing that. And it, you know, these steps take us to a journey, and they help us find the power greater than ourselves, and that's really what it's all about to me. It's about getting that power greater than me, and you know, going on this awesome journey, regardless of what happens. You know, my God brings me back to the center and gets me back on track. So my time's up, and grateful to be a part of this meeting. And again, thanks for Louis and Patrick for asking us.